Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
The trailer, it's definitely a dated trailer. I actually thought it kind of set up the story okay. I didn't have any problems too much with it. I was actually kind of surprised that they show some gore in the trailer that I thought would have not made it into a trailer, like when they're having their shootout and like the back gets blown out of a cop and stuff like that. It's in the trailer.
Well, and they show the head split at the when he climbs up across the semi. Like that's the big makeup effect,
yeah.
And they show that. Like if there's a huge giveaway, that's the big makeup effect of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they gave that right away in the trailer.
I don't have too many problems with the trailer. I think it works for a dated trailer. I mean, it does feel dated. It feels like they're kind of trying to sell this vampire story in a tricky story that never says, hey, we're vampires. But you get the idea. I guess you loosely get the idea from the trailer. I don't know. I thought it was okay. What did you think?
Spoiler, I'm not crazy about the movie. And so the trailer is really puts a hat right on top of that feeling for me and doffs it to me a little bit. You thought the movie was bad. Wait till you get a load of me. But it did what it needed to do. And it it gave us some of the makeup effects. It shows you what kind of movie that at least the marketing people thought this should be. And I think in some respects that's unfortunate, because I think the movie had a lot more potential to be sold in a little bit of a different way, that might have made it more interesting. And the poster in particular, the poster shows, the main poster shows, Paxton and in his full, beat up gore, outfit, which is all of about 30 seconds of the movie, right? The movie is not representative of that, I don't think. And so I think it's unfortunate. And that's why, I mean, you get what you get out of the trailer. You get that in the movie. Like if you're a horror film, aficionado, and you want to see the vampires romping around it, you get that. But I think it sells the movie short.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's I felt like they could have shown a few more big moments, a few catchphrases or something, just to kind of give it a little bit more. I mean, I like that it actually takes its time with the intro in the trailer, which I thought was interesting, that you see quite a bit of kind of the moment where Caleb is, after he's been turned, he's stumbling through the field, and they pull up in their Winnebago and grab him and drag him in, and they kind of have that conversation in there, when the intro to Severin. It's kind of, I mean, you get like a hefty chunk of that little scene.
Yeah, very
through.
Patient.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see. It's not my favorite trailer, but, I thought it did an okay job of selling it, I suppose.
Buddy, I'm going to separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We give him a week to see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the gang's all here, but this time they're cowboy vampires. We're diving back into Kathryn Bigelow's films with her 1987 movie, Near Dark. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy the show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back-channel conversations on Discord, help us pick movies for upcoming series, and listen to the members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee, where we talk movies, trailers, and more. Plus, we have a battle of the lists of movies related to our show that week. This next week, we're comparing the lists of our favorite modern takes on vampire movies. Just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
Check out time.
This movie, Near Dark, Andy, this was pitched as some sort of revisionist mashup of vampire movies and Western movies and a dose of biker movies all in one. And it kind of made me mad while I was watching it. Like, this is just because you set a movie in Texas doesn't make it a Western.
Out of curiosity,
There's a horse in it.
Right.
The horse that plays no significant role, even though they have that build-up. They show her the horse. She's clearly a vampire. Show her a horse at night. They have a thing, she and the horse, that you expect to pay off later. There's no payoff with the horse. I wanted her to eat the horse. That's what I wanted. Eat the horse. If you're going to show a horse scared of it, I want the horse better get eaten.
Or at least have the horse be scared of him when he comes up in his turn.
Exactly.
That's what perplexed me.
Oh, lots of those things. He's got a rope and he wears a hat. But just because it was set there doesn't mean it follows the sort of expected tropes of the Western. And so I'm not crazy about that.
Well, I mean, but then you're saying that are you saying Westerns are only films that are like in the 1800s? Like,
not at all.
Okay.
No.
So like is No Country for Old Men? Does that have elements of a Western?
I would say that leans more Western than this. Also, maybe no vampires in that movie, so maybe that is the defining factor.
So you'd be okay if it was like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and the ugly happened to be a vampire.
Come on. I know you are pushing as this, but you cannot sit here and tell me that this movie felt like came to you with the sense and sensibility of a Western.
It did, in the sense of kind of like the No Country for Old Men type of Western. You know, you have these kind of Western characters. Now, that being said, I don't think that they tapped into that Western trope, kind of the genre conventions, as well as they could have. But I do think that some of them are there, and I do appreciate them. But I largely still do agree with you. I am just poking a little bit because
Telling you, man.
I think that some of it's there, and I appreciate them setting it in this world. Now, you're right. Should they have called it like a Western vampire movie? Maybe not. That does make me think of like The Good, the Bad, and the Undead.
Yes.
But I still think that there is an interesting set of conventions in there with the Western. But yes.
But could you have just picked this thing up? You just pick it right up and put it in Chicago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like calling John Carpenter's Vampires a Western, which, I mean, it's kind of the same vibe. You know, it takes place in kind of an Old West town, and you know, it's vampire hunters going after this big bad vampire. Is that fair to call that a Western? Probably not.
Well, by the same token, is it fair to call Martin a vampire movie? You remember that one?
I don't.
Crazy.
Remember that one.
Are you serious?
Martin.
1970 something. This was Martin is where he thinks he's a vampire, and he has to, but he can't, like, he drinks blood, but he has to take it out of a syringe. Yes, he doesn't. Anyway,
That doesn't
it's
ring a bell.
bananas. It is just bananas. Add it to your list, Martin.
That makes me think of the one, the Nicolas Cage vampire movie, Vampire's Kiss.
Oh, Vampire's Kiss.
Right, Peter Wright.
Right, Peter. Right, Peter Wright. Right. Ah, Andy.
You forever
Stop distracting me.
You forever burned that into my head from that movie. So thank you.
You're welcome. Now, it looks like everyone is having fun in this movie. I know this came out after Aliens, which was, as you remember, it's a movie we quite like.
Oh, quite like, yes.
Why is it that this movie then feels like the audition tape for that movie?
Well, there's a difference in budgets, Pete. That was
a significant difference in budget, right?
Yes. This is very much a first film. I mean, yes, Kathryn Bigelow had co-directed a film before this with Eric Red, who she co-wrote this and that other project with. And then he had a turn directing, and then she had a turn directing. This was her turn at the helm, directing her solo feature project, and it feels kind of like a first film. You know, it's rough around the edges. It feels low budget. It has that overall sensibility of somebody who is playing with these tools for the first time on her own and trying to figure out how to make it all work. So I think it does.
But I think you give her too much credit for it looking like a first film. What I find really stunning is that even the cast shows up and delivers performances that feel like first film performances, even though I know they are perfectly capable of doing more interesting, more compelling work, more grounded, foundational work.
I think that's a little harsh to say. I mean, I think that they actually, other than maybe a couple performances, I think that everybody is actually doing a good job here. They're having fun with their roles, and it's just kind of darker, interesting characters. And I really enjoy largely the trio from Aliens that was ported over and performed here. And I don't feel like they are necessarily, doing something that's worse. I might say that about our leading lady, Jenny Wright. I felt like she was a little rough. Adrian Pasdar, as much as I did enjoy him in, what was it, Heroes?
Yeah, Heroes, and then he's in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, I mean,
he's all over.
I think that this, it's earlier in his career, and I felt like he might be a little rough. But, I don't know. I still walked away from this enjoying it, maybe not as much as I was wanting to, but I still enjoyed it enough to say, that was kind of fun. I'd watch it again.
I knew you were going to love this movie.
I didn't say I loved it.
You said you loved it. I knew you were sitting there just, where can I get the Blu-ray? There's no Blu-ray, Andy. You can't have it.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to track down.
What do you think of the on this film's contribution to vampire lore?
Well, that's actually, I think, a good question, because you're right. Going back to this whole idea of tying this Western feel with this vampire genre and kind of blending it all together, how well does that work? And through that, are they really adding more to vampire lore? I do think it's interesting that they set up this whole vampire story without ever saying vampire. They have a lot of the stuff that we normally contribute to vampires, like, the have to be out at night. They can't be out in the daylight. They drink blood. But it eliminates like the garlic stuff, and it eliminates the cross stuff, and it eliminates a lot of those sorts of elements that can be a little much sometimes. And I felt like it actually worked in a pretty interesting way that I liked. I really liked watching these guys. I mean, it's interesting because you're hanging out with all of the bad guys through the duration of the film as this as Caleb is trying to kind of sort out his allegiances, basically. But the vampire lore, it's like his dad finally saves him and gives him a blood transfusion, and that actually clears him up, and he no longer is a vampire. And then
with whose blood? With his own blood?
With his dad. His dad.
With his dad's blood. They tried. So does that? And you walked away from that thinking, resolved.
No, I thought it was strange. I did think it was strange.
Oh, good.
I'm saying,
thank
but
God.
It's an element of vampire lore that they've contributed here, which actually they didn't. I mean, that's actually something that was way back in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the whole idea of a blood transfusion.
Yes. That was Van Helsing's big gig.
Right, exactly. So I thought it was interesting that they actually took that all the way through and actually made it work. And then at the end, you end up having a relatively positive ending as both Caleb and May are cleared of their vampirism. And now I liked that element of the story. I mean, the actual act of the transfusion might have been a little hard to buy into completely, but I still thought it was an interesting way to kind of resolve the story and come through, which made it to me feel like, okay, maybe the Western element didn't come through as much, but certainly I did feel that it was an 80s look at kind of like, dealing with your kids who are falling into the drug culture. And here you have this father and sister on this pursuit to find their the son who has fallen in with these bad people and is making bad choices. And here they are finally able to pull him out and help him see the light. I actually thought that was really interesting, and I liked that element of it.
See, I absolutely see that. And I think that is a noble vision of the film, like that it is, in fact, a story of addiction. It is a story of what that looks like and the damage that it could, ostensibly do to a family. Although we don't see that, we don't actually get any sense of what it's done to the family besides them traipsing along and trying to follow the trail. That's not a significant part of the film. Like, that's not a significant sort of emotional anchor is what's going on with the family. And so I don't know, I wasn't crazy about that, but I get it. The problem is that I think they set up these tests of, testing us to question our understanding of long established lore. And they did it in a way that was not grounded in its own world well enough, right? So when I'm confronted with Adrian Pasdar saying, "Hey, Dad, you ever done a blood transfusion?" The setup, you have to watch so carefully the setup of why that actually makes any sense in the world. It's in the very beginning when Dad is actually doing some work on one of his animals that you get a sense that he's some sort of I'm guessing a veterinarian, that he has some equipment around the farm that actually, and some expertise that would indicate maybe he has the skill to do a blood transfusion. And it's not enough. It's not enough of a grounding in his background that you would think, okay, I'm going to try blood transfusion. That makes sense. I was actually much more interested in seeing what it would be like for him to go back and try to normalize with the family, having the curse of being a vampire still inside of him in some way. And that's what I was hoping for. That's what I wanted to see was, if we're really going to go all in on this metaphor for drug addiction, being an addict cannot be cleared with a drug, with a with a blood transfusion. Addiction doesn't work like that. It's always with you, and let's try and play that side of the story. And so in that regard, this thing ended way too easily for me. It just was like a wink and a nod, and we're done with the movie. And the fact that May comes along and we resolve her storyline as well, it was just it was just too easy.
And to your point, there's another element to that I think makes a lot of sense in this whole idea that it might have been too easy, is that for somebody who, quote, is addicted, he never actually completes his turn, right? In order to turn, as we keep hearing from the rest of the family, from Jesse and Diamondback, that Caleb has to kill, right? Even May says, you have to kill. And he always chickens out. He never can quite do that. And the only way that he's surviving, really, is through May's generosity and letting him suck her blood. Mm-hmm. And so, as far as kind of the drug addiction analogy goes, and I know I'm kind of destroying my point to a certain extent, it doesn't completely work because he never really becomes addicted. And it's only just that need that he has, that he fights every night, where he's kind of like, crumpling over, clutching his stomach. That's essentially all that's ending here.
Yeah. And, I feel like this film is missing an obligatory scene. Like, if you're going to have a movie like this and you're going to put him on the bitter razor edge, we have to have a scene where he can really, thoroughly explore his abilities, right? We have to see him tortured a little bit by having to let go of the later. You know what I mean? And in this movie, we have the bar scene, the bar shootout, where he gets to punch a guy twice and revel for a half second in his newfound strength, and then he sits on a bar stool and watches the massacre. But we don't ever get a sense of him being, in fact, on the verge of healthy, on the verge of exploration and discovery of what he can actually do to make that fight, to make the fight against the turn to kill at all difficult for him. Right? It's just that he's got a tummy ache. That's all we actually see portrayed from this character, right? And when the very strangely telegraphed, bandaged, plainclothes police officer holds his hand up to his face, we get to see him sniffing the bandaged hand, which is super awkward. but I just it never really resolves in a way that is satisfying and believable for this character to either become a vampire, become on the verge of a vampire, and then have to struggle to let it go. It's just, again, too easy.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and I have to talk about the sensitivity to light, because that is the central thing that they sort of hang their hats on for vampirism in this movie, right? That light is the big bad for these guys. And so they train like, a military unit to black out cars and to black out, spaces where they're at risk of being exposed to any light. Because what happens when it's at its worst, they immediately light on fire. Their skin will start to burn and then light on fire. And if they're out in it too much, they will explode. They will explode. I have never seen.
That was awesome.
I've seen them. They turn to dust. I've seen all that. I've never seen the kind of this is like a Michael Bay explosion. And it actually, I think it works. Like, there's a sense of fear and doom that is always following these people, even though at night they are the ones very clearly in power. And I think there are some sequences that work that are sort of comedic, that are threatening. But during the daytime, this is really scary. But it works sort of inconsistently. The whole light versus vampire thing. Sometimes the light is really dangerous, sometimes it's not. And I think they, from a production design standpoint, they set themselves up to have to push the limits of credulity, and particularly in our deep scene dive tonight that we're going to talk about. So,
well, I mean, it certainly depends on who it is, right? Because if it's May, after she's trying to help Sarah at the end in the climax, she jumps out of the car with Sarah, and she's lightly smoking, and
But if you're Homer,
meanwhile, Homer, who's running behind her, I mean, he's like, bursts into flames and falls to the ground and then explodes, as you say. And so that is, one of those moments of convenience. And sure, you do have Caleb who gets there and kind of covers her up with a coat. But still, it's like, I don't know. I felt like that was a moment where it's like, it's a little too convenient to kind of pick which, who's going to deal with it in which way. I mean, I do like seeing, you've got Jesse, as he's driving, the sun's hitting his hand, and when you look at his hand on the steering wheel, I mean, it's just this charred mass of black, bubbly flesh, and it looks
and
fantastic.
His eyes too.
Yeah, his eyes
through the windshield are fantastic.
Through the flame and everything, and just how kind of the car kind of rolls to a stop and blows up because these two have just completely caught on fire.
God.
It was fantastic. I mean, that's a moment that I think is kind of an iconic moment for this, that stands out as something more in a vampire film that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So yes, it does have some issues throughout, and I definitely will agree with that. But I do think that moments of strength, like all of that, even if I don't buy Homer's on fire and May not on fire, I still love all of those moments where we see everybody kind of burning up and blowing up.
It's those moments, and I should say that it feels very much like they were doing the very best that they could with the budget and technology that they had.
Yeah. It was tough. I mean, trying to come up with ways to get everybody to smoke and everything, and you read about the effects work that they did with all the, I guess you could call them smoking jackets.
Compressed nicotine canisters? What? That were with tubes coming out of the face? It's horrible to make them look like they're smoking, and that they could, what they went through was amazing, especially this kid, Homer. But I just feel like it's those sequences that, even though where you are celebrating them as, real moments of strength, I am celebrating them equally while slapping my forehead. I feel like that it's those sorts of things that make me think, gosh, this is a movie that actually could be remade. Like, I could stomach a remake of Near Dark, because I think there's something to it. And I didn't, the movie I wanted isn't the movie that I saw, but there are hints of it there. So I will have one thing about Homer, and this is a bit about the narrative. You talk about things that you want to see in a movie when you're watching. You're like, oh, do that. The greatest opportunity I think they had to really subvert what we've seen in terms of vampire movies and what we are, willing to stomach, not just in terms of horror, but in terms of just, shock, is in Homer finding Caleb's sister at the vending machine. And you
at 5 in the morning.
At 5 in the morning, right? And then she's all the one who's judging McJudgy Pants, saying, "You guys stay up late. Come on, you're the one out there getting a Coke at 5 in the morning, pre-diabetic." Anyway, when he sees her, and you see that, that sort of love in his eyes, because he knows this is the one, and then he takes her back to watch a little TV, and the other, family members don't question it at all. There is no question about bringing this little girl into the room. They're going to just kind of let him have his way. And I think, this is going to make me sound like the horrible person, they should have let him have her.
Yeah.
That would have been fantastic. That would have increased the stakes, and that would have been something that wasn't predictable.
Well, and that's one of those moments that would have set it up for a different type of ending. Right now, you just have a very positive ending. The good guys win, the bad guys die. That would have been much more an ending in line with horror films, where, you might have that little twist right at the end where, Carrie's hand pops up out of the rocks and, stuff like that. And that they actually were thinking about ending it that way, where you get Sarah, Caleb, and May all kind of walking in the sun, and then Sarah looks down and notices that her arm is starting to smoke, And
that would have been so good.
And yeah, they gave up on that idea, which I guess goes to show, at least at this point in their careers, they weren't quite ready to jump into something that was going to be quite as dark as that.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've ever seen that sort of a thing on screen. I think we've had hints of it. I don't think we actually saw, and this is even since then, I don't think we saw Kirsten Dunst get turned in Interview with the Vampire. She was already a vampire.
No,
when
we
met
see her turn.
We do?
Yeah, we see her die, and then her hair curls. Remember, her hair all of a sudden is like super curly.
Oh, man, that all came back to me all at once. Wow. Yep, you're right. Okay, so we did. But do you remember if we saw Ralphie Glick in Salem's Lot? I don't think we did. I think
now we're jumping way too far back. I can't
he
remember
was taking kids for the master, and I don't think we actually ever saw him get turned. So interesting. So I take it back. But again, that was after this movie. Vampire, but I think that would have been a bold thing to do.
Yeah, it would have been.
Look at me going with the horror vibe.
But that being said, I still appreciated that. I mean, here they were with a 13-year-old kid already doing what Kirsten Dunst did a few years later in Interview, where we had this old soul who was incredibly frustrated because he had lived for decades stuck in the body of this 13-year-old boy. And I loved that. I mean, it's like I felt, now I can't say if I felt this when I first saw this movie, but watching it again, I'm like, how refreshing to see that in a movie from 1987 where you have this frustrated kid who is essentially an old man living in this body. I loved that.
I totally agree, actually. And the kid was fantastic. Joshua John Miller played Homer. He was great and totally believable.
Absolutely.
Totally believable.
Yeah. He was one of those kids at the time who was, he was in River's Edge and this, and he'd been in some TV stuff, and he was in Halloween 3, and he just kind of had that vibe. He seemed like a kid who was tapped into something a little more adult or darker, You know what I did? Speaking of the different characters, we have our vampire family, and the one that really stuck out for me, and I think for a lot of people, is Severin, Bill Paxton. He's such a wild cowboy, not cowboy character, but he's just kind of that wild, crazy vampire character. And of the group, he seems kind of the most who's like the typical vampire sort of guy, just willing to kind of kill. I mean, the other ones are too, but there's something about the way that Jesse acts that seems a little different than the way Severin acts, And what I love so much about Severin is the brilliant way we meet him. I mean, this is right after Caleb is struggling through the sunny day in the field, and they pull up in their Winnebago and grab him. And he kind of, we join Caleb as he looks up, and he's staring right into Severin's face, and Severin is just like, "Howdy, I'm going to separate your head from your shoulders. Hope you don't mind none." And I'm like, that's just like such a great character intro. And like, there are moments like that in the script where I feel like, okay, there might be some big issues with the story, but I will say, I think that the writers, Kathryn Bigelow and Eric Red, had a good handle on these characters, and they found ways to write some really interesting moments for them, this being one of them.
I agree with you on the character, but man, I just ran out of patience with Paxton.
Is that just his character in general?
The portrayal, I think, of the character. Like, I get that. I get who this, and why is it that I have trouble with Severin, but I don't have trouble with a very similar sort of character in Aliens?
I don't know.
I don't know why that is, because I really quite like him. And in fact, the more I have seen him, the older he's another one of those actors where the older he got, the more interesting I think he became. And in this case, the scene you described is a great character intro. And why do I not? I just have trouble seeing through the Bill Paxton-ness of it to actually get my head into who this guy really is.
That's interesting.
So it's a character that I think there is a rift between the performance and the writing of it. And so yeah, I struggled with it. I struggled with it all the way through.
Anyone else, or was it just him?
No, there really wasn't. I actually found the portrayal of Lance Henriksen portraying Jesse. I thought was, it was that brute. In fact, his sort of brooding portrayal of Jesse, the kind of, he is the sort of supreme demon. That scene in the hotel room where they've been playing cards and there's that sort of high angle down on him, and he's got his hands kind of loosely draped in front of him, and then he flops them out as if to say, whatever, that is like the central moment that defines, who he is to me. Just like he has all the power and all of this sort of weird demonic kind of elegance and so little care for the world. In fact, watching the behind the scenes stuff, I can't remember now what it was called. You pointed me to it, the making of thing.
Yeah, right. I can't remember either.
Yeah. Anyway, it's on YouTube. We'll put a link to it. Anyway, the way he talks about getting ready for this character made Lance less likable to me and Jesse more. That's a weird thing.
A little bit, yeah. Well, it was funny. I read that he drove to across country to the filming location, which I might have just been Arizona or Kansas. I don't know where they were at this time, and he picked up hitchhikers along the way, and he wore his wardrobe plus his long nails and his hair extension. And he imagined that he was Jesse as he picked these people up. I'm like, that's super creepy, man. Super creepy.
Well, and I don't think I've ever heard this before, but hearing Paxton talk about Lance preparing for the film, he said, yeah, Lance is the kind of guy who just goes and will dump thousands of dollars into props and, anything that he can find to get himself into the character. And so I hadn't seen him for a while, and he comes back and he shows me that he had this guy like manufacture these really thick, gnarly fingernails, and he had them put on, like glued onto his fingers, and then he went home and ripped at the edges of them and broke them all off with pliers to make them look that sort of ripped up, rugged look. And he just wore those around while they were shooting. It's just a thing that's Lance doing his Lance thing.
Yeah.
It was so good.
I love it. It makes him sound like the ultimate, we
He's
thought
full
Dustin
method,
Hoffman was
right?
bad in Marathon Man, but
yeah.
Acting, my dear boy, acting.
We've got to talk about the love story, because I think you and I both had a problem with the love story.
This is just, it's such a typical kind of Hollywood screenplay way for characters to fall in love after they meet, and it's just such an incredibly short meeting. And here we have May and Caleb, and he kind of picks her up, and there's this little romantic tryst, I guess you could say, that they have out with his horse at his ranch. And then they kind of fool around in the car, and she bites him and stuff. But then all of a sudden she's like head over heels in love with him and doesn't want him to get killed by these guys. And it's like, where did all this come from? I can appreciate why he sticks with her because she's the only one saving his skin. But what was it that made her turn so quickly? It was just one of those screenplay elements that I felt like I never could quite buy into.
It's the Romeo and Juliet thing, right? I mean, Why did they fall in love like the way they do?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
quickly. You just have to kind of write that off. And in this case, is the world around it built in such a way that makes that element believable? And I think for me, it is not, and it's sort of frustrating. And in particular, look at cultural elements that are super dated, and having him like lasciviously hit on her for eating ice cream in front of the general store it was a tough way to start the movie and not look just out of place.
Well, and not only that, I mean, and it's obviously of its time, but looking at it through today's eyes, you have moments like, he stops the car. Here she is frantically freaking out, saying, I've got to get home. And he stops his car and says, well, not until you give me a kiss.
Yeah, right.
Like, hashtag me too. It just doesn't work so well these days. It's a little rougher.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at it through the eyes of the 80s, I guess, but still, I mean, and obviously he gets his comeuppance when he gets turned into a vampire, but still. Yeah.
Aha, comeuppance.
Take that.
We already talked about the sort of pairing between Bigelow and Eric Red. And I don't know, maybe we should do Undertow. I think that only made it to TV.
Yeah, I don't know. I had
Eric
never
Red
even
one.
heard of it before until.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Had you had?
Yeah, it has real people in it. It was Lou Diamond Phillips, of course, Charles Dance, but Andy, Mia Sara. This is where Mia Sara went.
Oh, wow. Interesting. This is not the movie I was thinking of.
What movie were you thinking of?
I was thinking of the other movie that Kathryn Bigelow did before this one, The Loveless.
Yeah, that's not this movie.
No, The Loveless is the one that I was confusing this with. The Loveless has Willem Dafoe in it.
Yeah.
That she also co-directed and co-wrote with Monty Montgomery in that case. And that is Trouble Ensues when a motorcycle gang stops in a small southern town while heading to the races at Daytona.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
that's The Loveless, which maybe we'll end up in our final Kathryn Bigelow series.
It just might.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get anything out of the behind the scenes that you thought this is earth changing? This changes the way I see this movie.
Nothing like that, but what I did appreciate was, I mean, this is how people make it in the industry. And she and Eric Red were writing spec scripts. They were struggling filmmakers, and they pitch it to a money guy who appreciated them, and he told her, he's just like, because they had it as part of the deal where she's writing, she's directing it. And that was part of the deal. And he said, okay, you're smart. You have a good sense of the story. I will give you 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, if I don't feel like you are able to handle directing a film, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to get somebody else to finish directing the film. And I like stories like that where you go, okay, look, Kathryn Bigelow, there was that point in her career where she was that struggling artist and had to prove herself. And she clearly has time and time again since then. But way back then when she was untested, I mean, that was kind of the big moment. And she obviously knew what she was doing, and they were satisfied with the end product.
Well, and, it really underscores the just the importance of timing. Right, because she sits down with Stephen Charles Jaffe and says, I've got this script and we've done this thing and I want to direct, and he happens to say, right now at this point in time in the universe, I am looking for low budget original material scripts. I'm looking for that right now, and that is a window that opens and closes, and you don't know when and you don't know how, and they happen to be in a place where they could take advantage of it to significantly.
Those are those moments. You got to keep your eye out for them. So it was a fantastic opportunity for them, and regardless of any issues that there might be with the film, I think that it does exhibit an assured hand by Bigelow as she told this story that made a film that people still talk about. It is kind of this cult classic, and something that stands out, whether regardless of story issues. I think there are still enough elements in here that make it stand out and that show Kathryn Bigelow is somebody who knows how to direct a film.
Let's talk about the deep scene dive.
Let's do it.
Our friendly cast, our family, has blacked themselves out in a bungalow, and knock on the door. The police are here, and now we have a shootout, and it's broad daylight.
Boy, is it ever!
Why do you like this scene?
It's a fun shootout scene that takes place between these vampires hiding inside this bungalow that is getting riddled with bullet holes that each one lets in just these fantastically brilliant shafts of light that are just nothing but torture for these guys. And these cops outside, and the vampires are completely fine blowing as many people away as possible, knowing that every time that they shoot through the walls, it could be another shaft of light that sets them on fire. it made for a really fun shootout scene, leading to what I thought was a pretty exciting way to, escape, where Caleb basically has to run out covered in a blanket to get their van so that he can crash it into the building and allow everybody else to get in and drive off. I thought it was really a fun way to kind of see a vampire shootout and escape. It's not something that you would have expected to see during broad daylight. So to that, I gave the writers and Bigelow as the director a lot of credit for creating something that I thought was just visceral and entertaining.
I do too. I think just setting it in the daylight, just knowing that this is the kind of threat they're about, like the second you hear the knock on the door, this is the police, you know that this is a different kind of threat. And it changes your allegiance a little bit, right? Because now you're on the side of the family, right? You want them to be able to get out. You want them to be able to find a way to fight their way out, because we get to be inside the room and we get to be with them watching these shafts of light burn them, sometimes selectively, like I was talking about. I mean, this is what I mean. Like the production design is actually really cool. Stephen Altman and Diane Perryman, and obviously the camera, Adam Greenberg, it's amazing. And I think this sequence sets them up to create some absolutely stunning visuals. Every time a new, bullet shoots through the walls, we have these just striking shafts of light, really hard to capture as well as they did. And it just looks great. This is one of those sequences that really makes me wish for a remake with a little bit of a bigger budget, because I think we could see, even more of what they hinted at. In some cases you'll see a shaft of light come through and it actually lights some skin on fire through a shirt. And then later, when you see the entire thing completely riddled with bullets, it's got to be just, bright light in the room and people crossing shafts, and you don't see any of the smoke at all. And so that's the thing that, that it suffers at the hand of its own budget, that the ideas just couldn't quite be afforded. And I guess we have the rescue itself, where Caleb runs across the field. Why did they park their van quite so far away?
Right. It's not like there's anybody near this bungalow. They could have parked right in front of them.
They take every other precaution to black out this thing, and they park the van like 100 yards away.
Plus, you have Jesse wearing, he's got those blackout glasses that he wears around.
Yeah, like those welder's goggles.
Yeah, those welder's goggles with that nose guard, which looks like what lifeguard would wear or something. It's like the strangest outfit that he has as far as that goes. It's a really fun scene, and I think you're right that they capture between Bigelow and Greenberg, they capture some beautiful interior photography of this place, where you get a lot of silhouettes of these shadowy vampire figures as they're kind of hiding the shadows with these shafts of light behind them. It just makes for just a really beautiful scene. And I think that Bigelow really starts showing her strength as an action director right away. Showing that she can cut the scene together. I understand kind of the locations, where everybody is. I always have a good handle on all of that as it's going, leading up through the escape. Like she does a great job at running things as an action director, and I really appreciate that in sequences like this, or even the bar that happened right before this one. Although I do question, why did the police bring their witness to the scene with them? Why is James LaGrose in the car?
Yeah, he's in the car. It's one of those, we were looking for you moments. Like, come on. Come on.
Oh, it made me roll my eyes a little bit. I'm like, I don't know.
I will say, in terms of the production, or in terms of the just overall marketing design, this scene gave no end of great ideas for what to do with the poster art. All the different varieties of the poster, having the shafts of light coming out of the bodies.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's a really fun scene, and you're right. It's nice seeing them take the opportunity to kind of turn the tables on our expectations here, where, as you say, we are siding with the bad guys as they go through this whole thing. Both Caleb and the entire vampire family as they try to escape the cops. Although I also was wondering, why don't the cops follow them? I mean, they hop in the van and drive away, but the cops, I mean, it's not just one police car there.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of
There
cops.
are a lot of cars.
Yeah.
A lot of cars.
Yeah.
And they all just kind of sit and wait.
I also was curious. I'm like, okay, so they're all very happy with Caleb after this whole thing because, he risked his life and he ran through the sun and set himself on fire so that he could get the van and rescue them. And everybody's like, oh, you're one of us now and everything. But at the same time, it's like, he's the reason that they were in this situation in the first place, which they reminded us very strongly at the end of the previous scene, where they were very upset with him because he let James LaGrosse's character get away,
escape.
Yeah, and so how quickly they forget, I guess. But.
I love this conversation, Andy, because it feels like around every corner there's another opportunity for you to talk yourself into my side.
Curse you.
The special effects, again, a tip of the hat to Dale Martin, special effects coordinator, and we should say Gordon Smith is a guy we alluded to the vampire burn-up effect, and they say, as a quote, one of the technical challenges of Near Dark was to realize several extended sequences where the vampires burn up in daylight. Special effects makeup artist Gordon Smith devised a prosthetic makeup which concealed tubes on the faces of actors. On the faces of actors. The tubes were also hidden under the clothes of the performer and were connected to a vice that smoked tobacco under pressure carried on a harness. Each actor had a valve to shut off the system if they got sick or nauseous.
Oh, my goodness.
They could just turn on their smoking face.
That's so funny.
So good.
Paired with Dale Martin and Gordon Smith, we also just need to give a shout out to Everett Creech, who is the stunt coordinator, who, in scenes like this, I think it shows clearly how well this team worked together to really amp up these action sequences.
Do you miss Tangerine Dream?
Oh, eventually the conversation was going to turn to them, wasn't it?
Yep. You knew it.
Tangerine Dream, it's an interesting group of musicians that made some interesting film scores. I can't say that I really dislike them and what they've done in the world of film. I think they have made some interesting film scores. They're not my favorite. We talked about them last, I think, with Thief. That might be the only time we've actually talked about them. It's not their strongest work here. It's Tangerine Dream. I guess that's the thing, is like I listen to it and it's exactly what I expect of Tangerine Dream.
What was the song that was playing in the bar?
Oh, that was fantastic. It was Fever.
Yes,
the Cramps singing Fever.
The Cramps Fever, right.
Covering it.
So that I thought was really particularly great because it opens so much like Tangerine Dream. Like it feels so much of a piece of the entire score that I think Tangerine Dream was trying to kind of do here. I thought it was fine. I am actually, I think, more of a fan of Tangerine Dream than you are. But I agree with you. This is not this is not my favorite of the scores.
They had 7 scores in 1987. They were busy.
Yeah, but what's funny is that none of them were huge. And I know you're going to say 3 O'Clock High.
Exactly. I'm going to say 3 O'Clock
And I can't. That again is not something that imprinted on me as well as it did to you.
We need to do this. Is why we should do our Guilty Pleasure series again, just so I can talk about that film.
I feel like it's been so long since we've done that. I've got some that I'm dying to talk about.
Well, you've been waiting forever to talk about.
Shish.
Oh,
Shish.
Okay.
Shish.
Your favorite Bruce Willis.
Shh, shh. Let me tell you a little story about a man named Shh.
I will say, unrelated to the film we're actually talking about, Richard E. Grant is wildly over the top and quite hilarious in that film. So there, I'm giving you 1 point for that.
El Machina del Oro, the gold machine. Yeah. Come on.
Oh,
that's coming, Andy.
All right.
Oh,
I'm looking forward
I hear
to
that
it.
train coming.
3 o'clock high versus Hudson Hawk. There you go. Oh, boy.
Other cast, Andy. Adrian Pasdar, we've talked about him as Caleb Cotton. What happened to his voice over the years? He was so sweet. He was so sweet and cherubic in this movie. And now he sounds like he sounds like a buzzsaw.
Well,
he's great. He's great.
It was strange. I was from watching this film, I thought, okay, I mean, he still hangs out, he's with his dad and his little sister. Okay, is he supposed to be like a 17-year-old sort of high school sort of kid? But he was born in 1965, so he was like 22 when they made this. But, I guess that's how it is. So maybe it was one of those things where they're like, okay, he's 22, but he's playing 17. I don't know. I didn't completely buy him being as young as I think they were trying to make him in the film. What
about Jenny Wright? She was I think she'd only been turned 3 years before.
Yeah, she's relatively new to this. I didn't care for her that much. She's one of those actresses that had been kind of around and then disappeared in the 90s. She quit the film business entirely, and nobody knows where she is. But I don't know. I really kind of struggled with her the most out of everybody. I just never completely bought into her.
The whole time I couldn't shake the feeling that it didn't feel like she really wanted to be there. And I don't mean just like in the family, but in the movie.
Yeah. And I don't know if I contribute that to her as an actress or to the writers just not giving her enough with her part to do or what. But I never quite got not sold with May. And maybe it's also just because of the frustration of the love story. That could be part of our frustration with her as a character.
Lance Henriksen was, he's Lance Henriksen.
I thought he was great, and I love Jenette Goldstein and Bill Paxton, like that whole trio of the Aliens group.
What's great is to see Jenette Goldstein with more of a part in this crew.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. And man, she had just the best hair. I just love that giant, the blonde, bleach blonde hair with kind of the roots showing and everything. She just looked like the vampire version of the Bride of Frankenstein.
Totally. Well, and they told her apparently, you don't have to do the blonde. We can get. She said, "Are you kidding? That's why I'm doing this movie. I'm doing the blonde."
Oh, I just loved it.
And Tim Thomerson, Andy, as Loy Colton.
Yes, as Dad. Just the fact that here's the guy from Volunteers, and it was just seeing him again just gave me great joy. And I actually like what Kathryn Bigelow says about these two fathers. How how for the character of Caleb, he ends up having a father of the darkness and a father of the light. And in a way, you're seeing these two entities, these two fathers fighting for the son. And I thought that was actually a pretty interesting little element of the story here.
Tom Thomerson, man, he has been in a lot of stuff.
Oh,
you know this?
He's still busy.
204 credits so far.
Yeah.
I was looking to see because I know there are some things that I'm really, really love him in, and you can't just scan his list of credits.
No, he's a busy man.
It's long.
Did you see one of the things that he's they're wrapping up on right now, called "Bring Me the Head of Lance Henriksen"? And let me just read this description to you. This is just brilliant. I can't wait to see this. When 80s B-movie icon Tim Thomerson wakes up one day to realize the acting roles are not coming his way anymore, he sets out on a quest to find his former co-star Lance Henriksen to discover his secret of Hollywood longevity and gets more than he bargained for in the process.
Oh my God. I'll see that movie.
That is fantastic.
Yep.
Just brilliant.
This Joshua John Miller guy, he plays Homer the boy. I don't know. Is he the box office karma for this movie?
I don't know why.
Well, so he plays Homer. He's the old soul in a young boy's body. And 2 months, almost to the day prior to this movie opening in theaters, The Lost Boys opened in theaters. Joshua John Miller is Jason Patric's half-brother. Jason Patric obviously starred in The Lost Boys. So is the whole problem with Near Dark that it was actually a family feud?
That is funny and sad. Funny and sad.
It's sad. It's really sad. It actually is really sad. But I have to tell you, Andy, I have much fonder memories of The Lost Boys.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that
also
movie,
much bigger budget.
Well, and also a movie that I think was more made for us at that age. That was very much a movie I could watch in 1987, and I felt like those kids were me. This is not something that I would say is, that 13-year-old or 14-year-old or 15-year-old can watch and really enjoy. I felt like this is more of a kind of an adult vampire movie.
No, you have a really good point there. It's not like that. There was another one. Was it a Silver Bullet?
Yep.
You remember that one?
Yep.
Yeah, the werewolf one. There was the whole sort of category of these movies that
right.
were made for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point. As always, Andy. Standout point.
So jumping back to the very beginning, the very first shot of this film is an extreme close-up of a mosquito drinking the blood of Caleb before he smacks it and squishes it, right?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
So the filmmakers realized that in order to have a real mosquito interacting with a real actor, they actually had to grow this mosquito from scratch because they couldn't, rely on the possibility that it could be a mosquito that might have been that might have contaminants in it, right? So they actually had to grow a mosquito from scratch, and it was the 6-month process of them trying to get this mosquito grown so that they could get that first shot.
So they could murder it.
I
have an uncomfortable amount of trouble rationalizing that story. I'm going to be thinking about this story long after. Are you kidding me? They harvested a mosquito to smack it.
Yeah.
6 months.
Allow it to grow. Allow it to feed.
To thrive. And what were they feeding it?
I don't know.
Somebody would just have to stick their hand in every day?
No, I would assume that would potentially be introducing contaminants to it. So I would assume that they would have to feed it stuff that would be like, processed food for a mosquito. I don't even know. Like,
what if it was just that actor's blood?
Like
that's all. It was just
Adrian.
That one. It was only Adrian who. This is horrible.
Yeah.
This is worse than anything in the movie.
So crazy. I love this story. It's the strangest thing to go through in order to make that work.
Not a good thing.
Yeah. All
right. So what's your big Arizona connection?
Well, part of this, I guess right toward the beginning of the film, they filmed it in Coolidge, Arizona. I don't exactly know why they ended up deciding on Coolidge. It's a little kind of a farm town on the southeast edge of the Phoenix Valley as you're heading down toward Tucson. That's where they start the film off. And I think they filmed it in a number of places, but they start it there. So kind of an interesting.
Did you see your house like in the distance?
I was a little farther away from that.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks like they filmed in Casa Grande, which is near there, and Eloy, all kind of in that area, and then Oklahoma and Los Angeles.
Somewhere over Macho Grande. All right, Andy, it's time. Tell me, I almost don't want to ask, how did it do in awards season?
This wasn't it's a small indie genre movie. It wasn't anything too big. It did, though, get 1 win and 8 other nominations. The win was at the Brussels International Festival of Fantasy Film, where Bigelow won the Silver Raven Award for Best Director, and that was in 1988. It did get a number of nominations at the Saturn Awards. We always talk about that. It's the International Horror, Sci-Fi, and Fantasy Film Awards. It was nominated for Best Horror Film, but it lost to The Lost Boys. It was Bill Paxton was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but lost to Richard Dawson from The Running Man, which was
that checks out.
I think that's fine. Best Supporting Actress, Jenette Goldstein. She lost to Anne Ramsey from Throw Mama from the Train, which I think is also fine.
That's fine.
Best Performance by a Younger Actor, Joshua John Miller lost to Kirk Cameron for Like Father, Like Son. the fantastic Dudley Moore vehicle.
Nope, that's not a good win.
And then Kathryn Bigelow lost Best Director to Paul Verhoeven for RoboCop, which I think is completely fair.
Yeah, that checks out.
And then, interestingly enough, back in 2003, the Saturn Awards gave their Best DVD Classic Film Release Award, and it was nominated, but it did lose to E.T., which was coming out the same year. So there you go.
What about, so this whole time, all I can think about, the more we talk about it, the more I want to see this movie remade.
Yeah. And they actually started a conversation about this. Back in 2006, they were talking about a co-production between Rogue Pictures and Platinum Dunes Entertainment. And I think Bradley Fuller, who was a Platinum Dunes producer, who was pushing for this thing to happen, said that unfortunately we have to put it on hold because at this time, you may remember there's a little vampire film that came out called Twilight that was all the rage, and they felt that this romance between the human and vampire in Twilight would adversely affect the potential remake of Near Dark. So it was shelved and never has been talked about since.
I think a remake would be better than Twilight, Andy.
You know what's funny is if you look at the Blu-ray case or the DVD case that did come out around 2000 or around this time, they redesigned it to look like it's a Twilight ripoff. Like you have Adrian Pasdar's face and kind of the blue lighting, and it's ridiculous. It makes you think that you're going to watch Twilight, one of the sequels. It's just terrible. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, I can't believe now that Twilight, Near Dark is kind of Twilight. Are you kidding?
I know.
That just occurred to me. Vampires.
Yeah.
So stupid. How did it do at the box office?
Well, Kathryn Bigelow, for her indie film, got a cool $5 million for this solo directorial debut, which is about $10.6 million in today's dollars. Her movie opened October 2nd, 1987, opposite Big Shots and Like Father, Like Son, the fantastic Kirk Cameron award-winning film. Unfortunately, it was following on the heels of, as we already said, the whopping summer vampire success that was The Lost Boys, and her little movie just couldn't find its audience. It opened in lucky 13th place, where it stayed for 2 weeks before it left theaters entirely. The movie only made $3.4 million at the box office, or $7.1 million in today's dollars. While it since has developed a cult following, at the time, the movie ended up with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $36.4 thousand. But at least it wasn't the end of Bigelow's career.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
To ouster.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I know.
Well, I mean, I get based on how I felt watching the movie, I guess I can sort of see that. At least it wasn't the end to Bigelow's career. This was not my favorite movie. There were some strong elements in it, some fantastic visuals. Love the treatment of light. Generally annoyed by a couple of the narrative choices and Bill Paxton. And that ended up being a fantastic audition tape for other movies.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, I guess. I didn't love it. I certainly have problems with it, but it's certainly something that I'd be interested in watching again. So that's where I came out with this one.
Then it's time, Andy. We need to rank it.
All right, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see our list of movies, or you can just tap on Flickchart in the show notes, and it should take you right over to the website where you can add it to your own list of movies and see how it stacks up to ours.
Well, first up, we have Near Dark, or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the 2009 version with Numi.
I will take Numi, please.
I will as well. Near Dark, or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
I will take the Baron, please.
Yeah, I guess I will too.
You. Yeah. Yes, you will.
Near Dark or The Emigrants. I'm going to take Near Dark.
Me too.
Near Dark or Star Trek Insurrection.
Insurrection.
Near Dark for me.
No. You know that's wrong.
No, you're right.
Actually,
Insurrection. That's right. I enjoyed that a lot more than I had remembered. See, and I already forgot.
You see what happened? You already forgot. Yes, that's the curse of that movie.
It really is. Yes, I will say Insurrection. It has its issues, but so does Near Dark. It's the Tim Thomerson matchup. Near Dark or Volunteers? Volunteers all the way.
Andy, volunteers.
Oh, I've been waiting to hear that. Okay, here we go. This is the one. Near Dark or Star Trek Into Darkness? I will take Near Dark, please. How about Star Trek Into Near Darkness?
I will take Star Trek Into Twilight.
All right, let's do it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Oh.
Man, and I had already planned like 10. I've been memorizing
got it
a pattern.
Near Dark or the Hudsucker Proxy? Near Dark for me.
Hudsucker Proxy.
Okay, here we go.
Uh-huh. 1, 2, 3. Paper.
Rock. Oh, man. Not having luck.
Nice.
I know.
Nice.
Near Dark or Bull Durham? Bull Durham for me.
Yeah, Bull Durham.
Near Dark or Say Anything? Say Anything for me.
Say anything.
Well, that puts Near Dark at 299 out of 341.
That's
it's pretty far down there. It's at about a 12%. So there you go.
What does this do for your personal flick chart?
My personal chart ended up at 1636 out of 3925, which is a 58%. Lower than I actually would rank the film. But that being said, I felt like as I ranked it, it ended up in the right spot.
Mine ended up at 695 out of 1,012, or 31%, which it feels about right to me too. It's down in that range of films that, I don't give a whole lot of thought. And so that's about right. It's purgatory. That also says that it should be a 1.5 star if I go by the algorithm for letterboxd.com/thenextreel. I'm struggling with that. 1.5 stars feels a little bit low to me, but maybe not too low. Thinking 2 stars.
Oof. Okay. Well, I'm at a 3.
What are you, 4? You're at a 4.
No,
solid 4.5.
I'm 3
6.
and a like, because I do have a lot of problems with it, but I still ended up enjoying it. So 3 and a like.
Well, then let's give it a solid 2.5, and you can have the like.
So you were at a 2 and no like.
I'm at a 2. Well, it doesn't matter whether my.
Well, it does.
We average to a like.
I yes, but when I list them, does yours will it be a 2+, or is it just a 2?
It's just a 2.
Okay.
All right.
Well, there you go.
Like, I'm glad to I'm glad to have this movie out of the way. It sort of clears the decks so that we can move on to something else, which is what?
Yeah, we're going to be jumping to a film that I think is scoffed, but is going to be a fun one to revisit. This is 1991's Point Break, a movie I have not watched probably since college, but I remember having an awful good time with it. We are skipping Blue Steel, the Jamie Lee Curtis cop film, jumping over to Point Break to discuss surfing and bank robberies and shooting your gun up into the air and going, "Arr!"
I've not watched this in years and years. When's the last time you've seen this?
Yeah, it's probably college.
I'm very excited to watch this movie again. Very excited. And I never saw the remake of Point Break either, which is also on my list for this week.
Oh,
I have to. I'm going to see the whole Point Break. I'm going to celebrate the whole canon.
If I can find the time, I will throw that on as well.
As you should. I think you should. All right. This was delightful, Andy. Thank you, as always, for your time. This whole show could not happen without the fantastic hard work of all of those on the film board, including Stephen Smart, who runs the Instagram program, Ben Steerick, helping out over there, and Ben Lott runs all things Twitter and the Blot Spot, and, of course, the next real theme, Ragtime Instrumental, which you can find over on Eli Catlin's SoundCloud page. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Now, I wasn't crazy about this movie, so I went with a 5-star.
And I enjoyed it, so I went with a 1-star.
There you go.
Should we go up or down?
I think we should go down.
Okay, then kick it off.
Mine's a little bit long. I'm sorry about that, but I feel like there's a sense of just sort of childlike exuberance in this review that I have to just kind of strap in and ride all the way through.
I like that.
Bob.
Ride that horse, Pete.
Bob wrote in on this one. Ride that horse, Pete. One of the best vampire movies around, period. And you have to know there's no punctuation and no capital letters in this review at all.
Oh, okay, that makes it fun.
In my humble opinion, this is one of the finest vampire movies ever produced. Yes, it is very violent and gory, but why watch a vampire movie if it isn't? The acting is top-notch. The script is great. All in all, it's one of the finest vampire movies produced in the past 20 years or so. The whole idea of placing vampires in modern times and having them come on as cowboys and driving around in an RV was brilliant as far as I'm concerned. The love interest between the hero and the girl is wonderfully played out. There's not real sex in this movie, which, if not for all the violence and language, would probably rate the movie a PG-13 or something. I'm sure the hero would have loved to get the girl into bed. Unfortunately for him, the girl is a vampire and has other plans for him. There is humor laced throughout this movie, and if you listen carefully, you'll pick up on it. It's really difficult to make any horror movie and try to play it straight all the way through. To have tried that with this movie with all the intensity and violence would have not worked, I don't believe. It's a wonderful horror movie, and I am pleased to see they finally released it on DVD. I guess voting for different movies via Amazon to put on DVD does help. Do yourself a favor and purchase this DVD.
That's sweet.
Right?
I like that.
There's not any real sex in this movie, which should have been PG-13 or something. Right?
That sounds like a 13-year-old girl. Right?
But she had other plans for him.
That's just brilliant.
I love it. I love it.
Too. Well,
right.
let me drop things down a notch then with my 1 star by E. Barrios, who wrote in, if I could, I'd have given it a quarter star. Not 0, quarter. Near Dark has to go down as one of the worst horror movies of the 80s. Simply put, this movie is so slow and drawn out that I wanted one of the vampires, preferably May, to jump out of my television and bite me in the jugular just to get it over with. However, since that wasn't going to happen, the next best thing for me was to use the chapter jump button on my remote, which I used many times after the first hour. Rumor has it that Hollywood wants to do a remake of this dung flick. What are they thinking in Tinseltown? I mean, really? Well, as the old saying goes, you've been warned. Thank you.
Dung flick? I don't think I've heard dung used in that context before.
I don't think I have either. Dung flick.
Fascinating. Maybe he's German. Maybe it's a dung flick.
Dung flick.
It's a dung flick.
Yeah.
Yeah, jawohl. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in Season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy. And East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.